Made with Spoken.
Your Domer boyfriend. Everything is sex. Except sex, which is power. Janelle Monáe. Tengo, Lizzie calmed from the front. There's a Roberto Inez who wants to come to the back. Roberto Inez. I whispered the name to myself. I was busy with 2 other guests, 2 businessmen from Japan Dome, who wanted discreet protection while stationed in the Crescent. I was showing them our smallest, sleekest pistols, and I was just about to close the sale on a couple of beauties worth a couple months' rent. I did not recall an afternoon appointment with Roberto Inez, and I was annoyed with him for ruining my rhythm. Still, a potential customer was a potential customer. I bowed to my guests and asked them politely to pardon the interruption. Put him on camera, please, I said to Lizzie. Roberto appeared on my desk monitor. He was clad in a skin-tight high-end has suit, which left little to the imagination. He had a nice body, lean and muscular, without being too ridiculous. He probably ran or practiced a martial art, something that required him to be strong, quick, and flexible. Unfortunately, his visor was partially morphed, so I couldn't see his face. Was he hiding something? 2 forms of photo ID, please. Scan both to see if they're legit. Roberto was prepared. He quickly produced a Class A shuttle license and a Ruby Biotech work badge. When Lizzie scanned the Ruby Biotech badge, the DNA hologram had interwoven green and blue strands. This guy worked in R&D, and he was on the senior rung, which means he was probably in charge of an important drug trial or environmental study. Good. That meant he had credits to burn. I could definitely squeeze him in. After my current guests, of course. Tell Roberto to take a seat. I'll be with him in a few minutes. And tell him to make an appointment next time. I don't like being interrupted. Fortunately, my Japanese businessmen were not offended, and we concluded our business quickly after that. They left by way of the tunnel exit satisfied. Send our friend Roberto back, I said to Lizzie, and don't forget to wand him. Certainly, boss. I watched her as she carefully ran the wand over his body. By then, Roberto had completely demorphed his visor, and what I could see of his face looked calm, almost beatific. Good, I thought. At least he wasn't angry about the screening process. He's clean, Lily announced. I pushed the buzzer to the hallway, and after a few minutes, Roberto announced himself on the backroom door intercom. Good afternoon, Tengo, he said. This is Roberto. He had a very pronounced accent, as in he hailed far, far from the shattered states. I pushed the final buzzer. He crossed the threshold and lifted his visor. Turns out I'd seen him before. You're the guy from the club last night. Yes, he confirmed. I tried to get your attention then, and I even bought you and your equally striking friend drinks, but you played hard to get. Yes, Z and I had noticed him staring. He was wearing a blacklight reactive has suit then. Whenever he turned around, his shapely buttocks glowed from deep magenta to electric blue. I even remembered drinks mysteriously appearing beside us, but by the time I went to search him out to thank him, he was gone. I don't do business at the club, I explained. It's gotten me in trouble with public safety before. This is not only a business visit, said Robert flirtatiously. Sure, I would like to make a purchase, but I would also like to spend some time with you. He unzipped the one arm of his has suit, revealing a toned forearm covered in tribal tattoos. Would you like to read me? That way you can know my intentions and you will see I'm not dead of soul. Dead of soul. That sounded like the literal translation of some foreign idiom. Where are you from, Mr. Inez? I detect an accent I can't place. Brazilian protectorate, replied Roberto. I'm part ex-Nilta. Ex-Nilta? Dang. There was a very good chance those tribal tattoos were the real deal, earned by initiation, and not just a fashion statement, although he'd just admitted to being a half-breed, and from what little I'd read, the ex-Nilta were big on purity. They were hostile to outsiders, and members of the tribe who mixed with outsiders, either by necessity or choice, were considered ritually unclean for a time. What brings you to the Crescent? I asked. I'm doing some work for Dr. Ruby. I must have made some kind of face, because he moved closer and extended his arm. Like I said, you can read me. He seemed eager to prove himself, so I took up his offer even though I could have read him perfectly well from across the room if I wanted. He read true, and he read strong, perhaps more so than me, and I'm no slouch. I told him as much. You're formidable. He smiled, and I noticed his eyes were very green. Green like leaves used to be when leaves used to glisten in the rain. So are you. I noticed that last night. He withdrew his arm and zipped up his sleeve. "It's one of the things that drew me to you." I blushed and immediately got angry at myself for doing it. There's not many who can make me blush, especially some man I just met, no matter how beautiful he happened to be. I could see I would need to keep my head straight and my shields up, or this guy was going to play me like a cheap fiddle. But then it occurred to me that ship had partially sailed. He was probably reading me from the moment he entered the room. Hell, he'd read me at the club last night. He was strong enough, and if he was in good standing with the Axnolta, he'd been trained to use his gift from an early age. "What do you want?" I asked. "I mean, really?" "Please don't be angry with me," Roberto said. "Yes, I peered into your soul a tiny bit, but I meant no ill. I just needed to see if you would help me." "Well then," I said, doing my best to summon a smile, "what kind of help do you need?" "I need a custom HAS suit rated for a hot zone. And I need protection, discreet but effective." The request for a laser pistol I could understand. The request for a HAS suit fit for a hot zone, not so much. "Doesn't your employer have suits that fit your needs?" "Yes, of course," replied Roberto, smiling. "But they are only to be used for company work, and this is for, how you say, a personal obsession." "What sort of personal obsession requires a top-rated HAS suit and a laser pistol?" I thought to him. "I'm looking for Eden," Roberto thought back. I had a good laugh at that one. "Eden, my dear Roberto, doesn't exist." "Tengo, you are wrong, believe me," he continued aloud. "The Axnolta know." I wasn't sure whether Roberto was crazy or what. He certainly didn't feel crazy to me, but I'd always thought Eden was a figment of conspiracy theorists' overactive imaginations. Perhaps Roberto didn't know any better, because he wasn't from region. Eden was rumored to be a vast swath of land on the outer edges of the 10th zone that Dr. Ruby had rehabbed into a verdant paradise for himself and the rest of his barren friends, and he could make the whole crescent as lush as this secret paradise if he wanted. Thing is, he didn't. He wanted, like all barons, to keep the good stuff for himself. If someone could only locate Eden and provide proof of its existence, the doctor's evil deception could be brought to light. Now I knew Dr. Ruby didn't make all aspects of his company's research public. And I knew he had a few pet projects of his own, but if he could truly heal the Crescent, I'm sure he would have done so. He'd already done so much for the deep outside. Hell, he almost single-handedly rebuilt it when Hurricane Kali washed a good part of it away. And he didn't brag about his good works like all the other barons did. If anything, he avoided the limelight and even denied his contributions. "What do you mean the Axnolta know?" I asked. "Dr. Ruby is a powerful shaman," Roberto said. "He healed the chief's daughter in the manner of the sages. He is the only Atilmi I have seen drink the seer's potion and not die." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ever heard of a drug called oxnysivir?" Roberto asked. Sure, I'd heard of it. It was the latest in a long line of Ruby Biotech miracles. It regulated the immune system and, depending on the dose, could be used to fight anything from superbugs to cancer with minimal side effects. Its active ingredient was sourced from a fern that thrived in what was left of the Amazon rainforest. The Axnolta had been using the fern in their seer's potion for millennia and were one of the few native tribes not to succumb to the new diseases the colonizers brought with them. During the more recent pandemics, several indigenous tribes in the Protectorate and beyond had been wiped off the map, but the Axnolta survived. The secret ingredient in their seer's potion was Y. Dr. Ruby was the first person outside of Axnolta tribal territory to cultivate the seer's plant, and Ruby Biotech began negotiations with the tribal council to harvest the plant on a regular basis. Eventually, other companies got wind of the negotiations and made several counteroffers. The competition grew so heated that Dr. Ruby finally flew down to meet with the Axnolta tribal council himself. It was a brutal contest, but Ruby Biotech eventually won. "But do you know what kind of contest it was?" asked Roberto. "No," I replied. "I can't say that I do, but I guess Ruby Biotech offered more money?" Robert flashed a self-satisfied smile. "No, you are wrong again. It was only about money to a point. In fact, Ruby Biotech only made the second highest offer in terms of monetary compensation." "So, how was the contest won?" I asked, growing impatient. "That is quite a story," replied Roberto, "which I will be more than happy to tell you over dinner. But first," he paused to walk over to where the HAS suits were displayed. "We should take care of business." "Gang. So that was the deal. He'd finished telling me about this contest and why he thought Eden existed if I agreed to dinner. But we couldn't go to dinner until I sold him his Haas suit and pistol, so he could go on this quixotic quest to find a place that was probably just a rumor. He browsed through the samples on the rack, pausing ever so often to glance in my direction. God, he was fucking gorgeous. I could just dive into those emerald green eyes and swim in them. He licked his lips. So, Tengo, are you going to help me or not? Yes, I thought to him. Let's scan for your measurements first. I grabbed the scanner from my desk drawer and went to measure him. Now, normally, scanning someone for a custom suit was uneventful. Though you had to get fairly up close and personal for parts of the process, being so physically close to a stranger never fazed me one way or another, no matter how attractive they were, or not. But with Roberto, it was different. There was definitely some energy passing between us, and it wasn't only lust. It felt like that point where two magnets both attract and repel. There was something vaguely violent about it, and it intrigued me. Nonetheless, I maintained my composure for the duration of the sale. Roberto bought one of the best Haas suits money could buy and a laser pistol that would put the scare into public safety. He dropped over 30,000 untraceables without blinking an eye. I knew Ruby Biotech compensated their research staff extravagantly, but I didn't think they paid them that well. Mr. Inez had another income stream. Perhaps he was a spy? But for whom? So, Tengo, Roberto asked, where would you prefer to dine? I'm thinking Danube and Dome East. It took several beats for me to scrape my jaw off the floor. I was surprised he would take me to the Dome in broad daylight on a first date. Truthfully, when I glimpsed Roberto at the club, I thought he was slumming, looking for some hot deep outside meat for some experience credit. If we hooked up at all, I'd forever be his side piece, nothing more. That's why Z and I had ignored him. Sometimes being the off-night backstreet is enough. Other times you're just not in the mood. What's an off-night backstreet? Roberto asked. Fuck, he'd heard me. Well, there was no use in lying. I was an open book. It's a reference to an old song. It means someone will never be serious about you. And that's why you ignored me last night? You thought I'd only use you? In a nutshell, yes. I see, said Roberto, nodding. I'm a domer, and you do not trust me. You might say that. I understand perfectly. The ex-Nulta know all too well the consequences of kindness offered too soon, especially to those outside your tribe. I must pass your test. Yes, I thought. That's something I'm willing to do, said Roberto. I would like us to be true friends. Where would you like to have dinner? We'll dine anywhere you wish. All I ask for is privacy. I'd like to finish my story. I can get us a private booth at Christie's. I know the owner. Okay then, it's decided, but I'm paying. If you insist. We actually had a nice meal, which was a surprise after all the initial weirdness. Roberto was an ethnobotanist and was researching how some medicinal plants might be cultivated in the hydro farms. He'd met Dr. Ruby on several occasions and liked and respected him. Even before I knew of his gift, Roberto said, I knew his soul was not dead. I was confused. So why do you think he's hiding Eden? I asked. You seem to be a fan, so you can't think he has evil intentions. I don't know, he said. Perhaps for the same reason he hides his gift in general. He knows most Itilni do not trust the wisdom of the spirits. If they did, they would not do half the stupid evil shit they do. Itilni. Roberto had used the word at the shop, and I'd let it go by since I was too dazzled by his physical presence. But this time, I asked its meaning. It's an insult, Roberto explained. Literally, it means mud people. It means you have no soul in you. You are raw, empty. The creators did not care enough to complete you. That's harsh. Yes, but it describes how most outsiders feel to me. Soul dead and dumb as dirt. Well, I'm glad you don't think I fit that bill. He reached for my hand and squeezed it. No, Tengo, you most certainly do not. He then launched into the story about the contest over the rights to harvest the seer's fern, and how Dr. Lillian Ruby revealed his gift for healing. At my invitation, Roberto began, Dr. Ruby gave a lecture at my university. Afterwards, I guided him on a hike through tribal territory. He spotted the seer's plant and asked if he could take a sample. I asked him why. He said he often brought back seeds and cuttings as souvenirs from his travels. He liked the company of plants, and his house in the Crescent was filled with them. Roberto told his guest he was welcome to take a sample, but he also warns him the Sears plant was notoriously finicky and that no one but an ex-nulta could grow it outside of its natural environment, and even then, it was difficult. Is that meant to be a challenge? Dr. Ruby asked me. No, I told him. It's just the truth. 6 months later, Dr. Ruby sent Roberto a picture of a lush Sears plant in his indoor garden. Roberto was astounded. See? The plant likes me, wrote Dr. Ruby. I couldn't believe my eyes, said Roberto. Many had tried, but no one had been successful before him. I told the tribal council about it. How did he discover that your Sears plant boosted the immune system? I asked. Or did you guys know that already? We had an intuitive understanding of the plant's benefits, Roberto replied. It's the main ingredient of the Sears potion that the initiated drink during the full moon ritual to keep the mind, spirit, and body strong, and keep us open to wisdom. And there were some colleagues at my university who suggested something in the Sears potion might contribute to our strong immunity, but no one had ever written or said anything out loud. How do you think Dr. Ruby found out? I asked. He was probably using the plant recreationally. If ingested in small amounts, it is a gentle hallucinogen. I couldn't help but laugh, so the boy wonder of the bayou liked his drugs. I guess the Crescent's top baron needed some respite from ruling the world, and where would he get the idea to use your Sears plant to get high? I'm certainly not in the habit of ingesting unfamiliar plants, even for pleasure. Roberto lowered his eyes. I might have told him, because I do it myself? I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. You beautiful, naughty boy. What a way to profane the sacred. So you took your little hike so the good doctor might grab some and try to grow his own stash. Yes, Roberto sheepishly admitted. Funny how a miracle drug gets born. Dr. Ruby shared the results of his Sears plant study, and Roberto's team replicated the results. Not too long after that, Ruby Biotech made its first proposal to gain harvesting rights for the plant. But by then, several of Dr. Ruby's competitors had heard the news and wanted to get in on the action, Roberto explained, and that was more outsiders than the council wished to deal with, especially since they didn't wish to deal with any. So the council arranged a meeting at the border of the central tribal village with the two leading companies. There, the chief proposed a test. At the time, the chief's daughter was gravely ill with a mysterious illness. Each company would be allowed to send one representative to drink the Sears potion and cure the daughter in the traditional manner. The one who was successful would gain their company harvesting rights. By then, Dr. Ruby had flown down to handle the negotiations himself, and he actually volunteered to drink the potion despite objections from his staff. He felt very strongly about the enormous potential of our Sears plant to treat many untreatable diseases, Roberto explained, and I think deep down he knew he was the only one who stood a chance of being successful. The representative from each company had to come to the village alone. When they reached the village proper, they were stripped of their street clothes and given ritual gowns to wear. Then they visited the chief in her hut and partook in the ritual meal with senior members of the tribal council. What was the ritual meal? I asked. Roberto smiled and licked his lips. Oh, it's quite tasty. A hearty stew filled with all the bounty the jungle has to offer. Any bugs in it? Roberto made a disapproving face. That's such an itilme question to ask. I don't know what you people have against eating insects. They're good for you. After the ritual feast, it was time to drink the Sears potion. It's not at all appetizing, Roberto said. It's a dark green sludge that smells like mold. It's bitter and extremely spicy, which, in a way, is good because it's meant to be ingested slowly. Drink the potion too fast and your heart will start to race and you will feel as if demons are chasing you. And believe it or not, taking your time will also keep you from vomiting. That does not sound pleasant at all, I said. To which Roberto replied, it's not meant to be. The young woman representing the rival company started vomiting almost immediately. Dr. Ruby held his own, taking little sips and resting in between. Still, it took him almost a half hour to drink the entire bowl, and when he finished, he started vomiting as well. But after the initial storm came the calm. Within 20 minutes of finishing their doses, Dr. Ruby and the young woman were well immersed in the spirit world. That's when the elders carried them to the hut to see the chief's daughter, Roberto said. Any idea what the daughter's affliction was? I asked. I have no idea, replied Roberto. No one had seen anything like it. The sickness began like the flu. But soon all this other strange stuff started happening. She had vivid dreams about places she'd never been. She babbled in a language no one had heard before. Her body temperature was erratic. One day she ran a fever so high, they literally had to bathe her in ice water to get it down. A few days later, her temperature was so low, they feared she might freeze from the inside out. The hospital finally threw up their hands. They couldn't save her. So the chief brought her home to die. So how did the council expect Dr. Ruby and the other young woman to save the chief's daughter, when they were both stoned out of their minds and had no clue what they were doing? They didn't, replied Roberto. It was an impossible task to ask two random Itilmi to walk among the spirits with absolutely no training, and the chief knew it. I think she wanted them to fail. Back at the shop, you said Dr. Ruby was the first outsider you'd seen to drink the seer's potion and not die. Did your chief even expect them to survive? Roberto let out a long sigh. Truthfully, I don't know. The council was surprised Dr. Ruby refused to let an underling drink the potion, even though several volunteered. Perhaps our chief sensed something different about him. Remind me not to visit, I said. I found it outrageous the council demanded the test in the first place. An outright no would have been less cruel. But maybe they wanted to teach the Itilmi a lesson, that everything on Earth wasn't theirs to buy. The council left the two strangers in the hut with the dying daughter and fate. Meanwhile, they kept vigil and chanted through the long night. The young woman from the rival company eventually fell into a coma and died. Dr. Ruby could be heard screaming something unintelligible for several hours, but eventually fell silent as well. Dawn broke like a fever and the council ended their chant. A weighty silence shrouded the hut, and the council felt an emptiness heavier than stone. No one relished the task of checking inside for survivors because they did not expect to find any. It was the chief who finally went inside. She was astonished to find her daughter alert, sitting up for the first time in weeks, Roberto said. The young woman from the rival company was lying in a puddle of her own bloody vomit. Dr. Ruby was alive, but feverish. His ritual gown was torn in several places. His hair was drenched and clung to his face. His glasses were broken. The chief cried tears of joy as she held her daughter close. The thin man with the wild hair, the daughter said. He fought the bad spirits and saved me. Afterwards, the Axnolta Council did their best to nurse Dr. Ruby back to health, and though he steadily improved, they feared they were in way over their heads. That's when the council contacted me, Roberto said, asking after Dr. Ruby's next of kin. They were reluctant to take him to the local hospital because they feared the bad publicity. I got in touch with Dr. Grove, who already knew what Dr. Ruby had done. He flew a private medical shuttle down to tribal territory. I was part of the group who helped transport Dr. Ruby to a clearing in the jungle where the medical shuttle was waiting. That's quite a story, I remarked. Although I wasn't really sure whether I believed it. Roberto must have sensed my doubt because he claimed to have proof and pulled his phone from his pocket. I recognized the kind of phone he had. I sold them in the back room. It was a phone fit for a spy or a criminal and very expensive, much too costly for a humble ethnobotanist, even if he was one of the best in his field and employed by the richest company in the world. That's one hell of a phone you've got, mister, I said. Tengo, please. Don't look so cross, said Roberto as he fiddled with his screen. It's just that your tastes are a little rich for who you claim to be, I said. Why are you complaining? That's all the better for you, is it not? He reached under the table to squeeze my knee. I blushed again. Damn, twice in one day. Eventually, Roberto found the proof he was looking for and handed me his phone. Watch the video, he said. I pressed play. Some men were loading a stretcher onto a medical shuttle. They weren't wearing hazsuits, but if they were in the Brazilian protectorate, they didn't have to. That was one of the few places on Earth where the outside was clean enough to walk around in your bare clothes. There wasn't a clear view of the person on the stretcher. The only thing I could tell for sure was that they had longish wavy hair and a prominent nose. Maybe it was Dr. Ruby, maybe not. The real proof was in the people who emerged from the shuttle to receive the patient. There was a man and a woman, and the man was most definitely David Grove. I'd met him on a number of occasions. He used to hang out at Christie's when Z was dating Allison Nightflower. Sometimes Z and David still met for drinks. The woman was unfamiliar, although she had the same wild salt and pepper hair, olive coloring, narrow face, and prominent nose as Dr. Ruby. Perhaps she was his sister? So, now I had an inkling Roberto's story was true, but there was still the question of why he was telling it to me in the first place. Okay, Roberto, I said, I believe you. But what do you want from me? I handed him his phone. Besides the pleasure of your company? This time his hand found the inside of my thigh. I don't think I blushed a third time, but my shields were blown to hell. Yes, I said. I'd like you to look for Eden with me. You are familiar with the hinterlands, are you not? You want me to guide you through that hellhole to look for a place that probably doesn't exist? Yes, I do, and I'll compensate you well to do it. From where do your credits flow? From a group of people with like minds and deep pockets. Then he thought to me, all we seek is the bride. So that was it. This guy wasn't a spy. He was a terrorist, a righteous terrorist, a black domer, a domer who supported the resistance. I heard rumors about such people, but I'd never dreamed I'd actually meet one, or that he'd be so dangerously sexy. I made a feeble attempt at escape. Well, Roberto, thank you for a scrumptious meal, but I must be going. Let's say we get the check. It's only 7:30 in the evening, Tengo. I do believe I frighten you. Yes, I admit it. You do. Then come back with me to my place and we can get to know each other better. You won't be so frightened then. Who knows? You might even have fun. By then he had moved next to me and was leaning in, his sweet breath hot on my neck. My mind was telling me to run for the hills, while my body wanted nothing more but to play with fire and be happily consumed. What can I say? The bod won out. I kissed him right there in the restaurant and felt like I'd never stop. Then we zipped to his condo in Dome East and fucked like it was the end of the world. It was some of the best sex I ever had. Believe me, the ex-nolta know.
Professional audiobooks in a click. Spoken.